Um, Bobby, you don't want to read this, or do you want me to read it?
You can go ahead and read it if you want, Mayor.
All right. So let me read this, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. I find it necessary to protect the health, the safety, and the welfare of the public, and in accordance with Governor Lee's executive order number 16, the Williamson County Highway Commission will meet electronically this month. The meeting will be broadcast on Comcast Channel 3, Charter County Channel 192, AT&T Channel 99, and United Communications Channel 207. The public may also access the meeting through YouTube at www.youtube.com/user/webnet/live. So at this time, I'll call order, call roll, and I need to hear you and you need to hear me. And at any time you cannot do that, let us know somehow. Call Eddie Hood and he can relay that message to me. So I'll begin with a roll call today. Mr. Tyson, would you please acknowledge, and I'll throughout the morning, if you will, identify yourself, such as Tyson here or Tyson motion to approve. That way we'll know and get the minutes accordingly. Mr. Tyson, are you here, please?
Tyson here.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Coleman present.
Mr. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. And Wayne, are you here?
Davis here.
Davis here. Good. Others on the call that are not part of the committee are Mr. Hood, Mr. Cook.
Eddie Hood here.
Mr. Hood is here. Mr. Cook is here. I see Joe Horn is here. Floyd Heflin is here.
Yes, I also have William with me here.
Thank you, Floyd. Okay,
And
gentlemen.
I have Greg with me here too as well, Roger.
Thank you for the minutes. Anyone else on here that we need to reflect in the minutes?
Elaine is here as well.
All right, and Elaine is here. Nina Graham is here. Leslie Mitchell is here. I think I got everyone. First order of business as we start our Highway Commission meeting this morning is the approval of the minutes from May 6, 2020. I will entertain a motion to approve those. Please identify yourself.
Coleman, so moved.
Tyson, so
Coleman made
Tyson
the
second.
motion. Coleman made the motion. Tyson is the second on the minutes. Any corrections or changes? I see none. We'll do roll call. Mr. Tyson,
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Wilson, yes.
and Mr. Anderson, yes. Mayor Anderson, yes. Minutes passed unanimous. We have no special announcements this morning. If there are people on our next agenda item, if there are people on the citizens communication, which I don't see anybody, we'll leave it open 30 seconds. Anyone wishing to touch base with us at the Highway Commission, please do so at this time. I see no indication. Yes. See no one indicating they would like to be on either through somebody or themselves. We'll move on to the section called election and appointments. We have none of those, nor do we have any old business. The first item we have on the agenda for action is a report for acceptance of the Heartland Road, Granbury Court, Stardust Court, Hart's Landmark Drive, Castle Line Court, and Loomis Court, Hart's Landmark Subdivision as part of the Williamson County Road System. This is Mr. Wilson and Sturgeon and Rainey on our county commission. I'll entertain them. Well, first of all, this is just the acceptance Let me have Eddie to give an explanation, then we'll jump to William.
Okay, what this is a report. William and myself have looked at this report on the road you just mentioned, and it'll be a resolution to follow up in July.
Thank you. William?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Eddie hit the nail on the head, and I recommend approval.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept these for today's agenda. Mr. Wilson, you want to do that since it's in your neighborhood?
Yes, Wilson, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Coleman,
Davis,
second.
I understood Coleman first will be the second. Mr. Coleman, second. Any questions, gentlemen? I see none. We'll do a roll call on the acceptance of these roads. First, Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman.
Yes.
Mr. Davis.
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
Thank you. And Anderson votes yes. The acceptance of the roads is approved unanimously, 5-0. Item number 2 on our highway agenda this morning is a report for the acceptance of Holstein Drive, Norwegian Rick Drive, and Dutch Belt Court Farms at Clovercroft Subdivision, Section 1, as a part of the Williamson County Road System. Charles, this is in your area. I'll accept a motion for the acceptance of this.
Wilson, so moved.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson's made the motion. Do I have a second?
Tyson,
Davis.
Tyson seconded. Thank you. Mr. Hood, would you kind of give us an explanation, please?
Yeah, so this is just like the one above. This is William and myself to look at these roads as well. This is a report and the resolution following July. I recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Hood. Since he's already included you, William, do you have anything else to say, William?
Recommend approval, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right, gentlemen, any questions on your part? I see none. We'll do a roll call. I'll mix it up a little bit. Mr. Wilson?
So approved.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Davis, yes.
And our homebound, Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
And Anderson votes yes. The acceptance of the roads was approved, 5-0. Gentlemen, on our next item is the fiscal year annual highway bids. I have got those highlighted here, and Leslie will be giving an overview of them. If you have any, if you will, pull your sheets out. The first one we'll be looking at will be the street tables. Leslie, would you give us a comment
sir.
on that?
Yes, sir. We received one bid for the speed tables from Traffic Logics for $4,850, and we're recommending award to that bidder.
Thank you. A motion, please.
Coleman, so move.
Thank you. Coleman moved.
Second.
Tyson, I heard, will be the second. Any questions, gentlemen, on this bid? I see none. We'll start with a roll call. Mr. Davis.
Davis, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman.
Coleman, yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Anderson votes yes. Passed 5-0. The next one we have is the steel bar reinforcement. Leslie?
Yes, sir. We received one bid for this item as well. We're recommending award to CMC Rebar. The epoxy coated reinforcing steel was $22,750. The rebar, steel bar reinforcement is $32,500.
Thank you. Entertain a motion, gentlemen, for CMC.
Tyson, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Second.
Coleman, second.
Thank you. Mr. Hood, I overlooked you in the first one, but I want this time. Steel bar reinforcement.
Recommend approval.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you have questions? Ready to vote then? On the motion, Mr. Tyson,
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
Thank you. Anderson, yes. Passed 5-0. On the next item we had are the guardrails. Leslie?
Yes, we received 3 bids on this item. We are recommending the bid to be accepted from Lou Incorporated of $280,501.70. We did not recommend this being awarded to the apparent low bidder because of past work performance. They weren't able to complete the work in the 10-day required from time that they were notified.
Thank you, Mr. Hood.
Recommend Lou Incorporated.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen? Ready to vote? Mr. Tyson?
Vote yes. Tyson, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis?
Davis, yes.
And Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
Thank you. Anderson, yes. Awarded to Lou Inc. Unanimously 5-0. The next one we have are concrete curbs. Ms. Mitchell? Leslie?
I mean, she's dropped off.
Yeah. I hate to tell a woman it's about bandwidth, but she's not showing up here, so let me do it. Concrete curbs, the motion was to approve Sessions Paving at a cost of linear foot of 39,750 is what I have on the sheet. Mr. Hood, correct me or make a motion or give us your words of wisdom.
Yes, I recommend Session paving for the concrete curbing.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen?
Chairman,
Mr. Tyson,
go ahead.
go ahead, David.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask Ms. Mitchell about the discrepancy in the unit price. That $7.95 seems awful cheap. I mean, I'm glad we can get it for that, but I just question the great discrepancy in those 2 bids.
That's my question also.
Um,
Mr. Coleman, that's what they bid it last year. They bid the same price, and this is a foot, per foot what this is, but they bid the same price last year.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll take a roll call vote. Mr. Tyson?
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Chairman, we need to get a first and second
Oh, I'm
motion.
okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Can I have a motion to approve Sessions Paving?
Coleman, so move.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Wilson, second.
Thank you, Wilson. So any questions? Now we got the proper motion second. I see none. Mr. Tyson?
Tyson, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis?
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
Anderson, yes. Passed 5-0. Leslie, I see you're back. I didn't want to say you lost your bandwidth, but
I'm here.
we'll move on to bid tabulations, explosives. Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, we received 1 bid from Hermitage and we are recommending the award to, and you can see their various pricing for the different items.
Thank you, Mr. Hood.
Recommend approval of Hermitage Explosives.
Thank you. Motion, please.
Coleman, so move.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Do I have a second?
Davis,
second.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Questions? Ready to vote? Mr. Coleman, your vote, please.
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis, your vote.
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson, your vote.
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Tyson, your vote.
Tyson, yes.
Anderson votes yes. It passed 5-0 unanimously. The next one we have is the bid tabulations for concrete. Ms. Mitchell?
We received 2 bids for the concrete. We are recommending to award to Volunteer Concrete. The total for Class A was $56,000. The total for Class D was $19,050.
Thank you. Do I have a motion, please?
Coleman, so move.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Do I have a second?
Tyson, well, second.
Tyson seconded. Mr. Hood, your comments?
Recommend Volunteer Concrete.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen? We'll do the roll call then. Mr. Tyson,
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Mr. Wilson,
Wilson, yes.
and Anderson votes yes. It passed unanimously 5-0. The next item that we have are the bid tabulations for blast monitoring. Ms. Mitchell,
We received 2 bids for this, and we are recommending the low bid for VCE of $185.
thank you. Do I have a motion for VCE, please?
Wilson, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second?
Coleman, second.
Second, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Hood, your comments?
Recommend VCE.
Thank you. And questions, gentlemen, on the blast monitoring?
One question, Tyson.
Mr. Tyson, your question?
What function do they serve, and if this is a safety type thing, do they bear any responsibility?
What
Mr.
this
Hood?
is, Mr. Tyson, whenever we shoot a shot, they come up there and set up and sometimes up around the jail, just make sure we are under where we can shoot legally. And I think we shoot up to like a 3.0, we never above a half of a point. So they just kind of keep us in check.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Other questions, gentlemen? All right, we ready to vote? We will. Mr. Wilson?
Wilson votes yes.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Davis, yes.
Mr. Tyson?
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Thank you. And Anderson votes yes, passed unanimously 5-0. The next one is the bid tabulations for petroleum products. Ms. Wilson?
We had 5 bids for the petroleum products. We are recommending to award to Panther Petroleum.
Thank you. Mr. Hood?
Recommend approval, Panther Petroleum.
Gentlemen, do I have a motion to approve Panther Petroleum?
Coleman, so move.
Thank you, David. Do I have a second?
Davis, second.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Questions? The only one that I have on this one, Mr. Hood, is probably more for you. Who is or where is Panther? That's one I haven't heard of.
They have located at one office in Nashville, Tennessee, and also one in Jackson, Tennessee.
Okay. All right. Have we ever used them before?
First time.
First time. Okay.
I do have a question, sir, Tyson.
Sure.
On some of these items, such as the 46A, looks like W hydraulic oil, one bid was $5.21, which is way, way lower than everybody else. Is there any way we can shop in amongst the bids and get some of these lower prices? Right below this is another one for $8 a gallon, and we're getting ready to pay $39. What's the sense behind it? And you got another $7.39, and here's a $29, and we're getting ready to accept. The question is why?
Can I explain that? The price per that was supposed to be 5 gallons. So the larger ones are actually 5 gallons. That Kimbrough is actually, they priced it per gallon. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
okay.
the larger numbers are 5 gallons.
So
I understand.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you, Leslie. Other questions? All right, gentlemen. Elaine, we do have a motion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Roll call, Mr. Tyson, Panther Petroleum.
Tyson, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
and Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
And Anderson votes yes. Passes 5-0. The next one we have for the bid tabulations, emulsified asphalt. Ms. Wilson? Miss Wilson. That's, I'm thinking of Dennis the Menace there. Let's try this
Nice.
again. Let's try this again. Ms. Mitchell.
After how her hair is.
I'm constantly called that.
All right, Leslie, get us out of the water here, will you?
All right, we had 2 bids for emulsified asphalt. We are recommending to award to Marathon, and their grand total is $111,550.
Tyson, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. Do I have a second?
Coleman, second.
Coleman, second. Question, Mr. Hood?
Recommend Marathon Oil.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen, on the emulsified asphalt? None. We'll do roll call. We'll go to, since I mentioned it earlier, Mr. Wilson,
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
Anderson voted yes. It passes 5-0. Marathon will be awarded. The next one we have on the bid tabulations are pipe. Ms. Mitchell.
We had 4 bids for the pipe. We are recommending to award to Williamson Pipe.
Mr. Hood.
Recommend approval for Williamson Pipe.
Thank you. And motion, please.
Coleman, so moved.
Thank you. I heard Mr. Coleman and Mr. Davis second. Is that correct, Mr. Davis?
Davis, second, yeah.
Thank you. Questions? Now ready to vote then on Wilson Pipe. We'll start with Mr. Tyson,
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
and Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
And Anderson, yes. It passed unanimously. Williams Pipe will be awarded. The next bid tabulation is for antifreeze. Leslie, would you talk us through this, please?
Yes, sir. We had 2 bidders for the antifreeze. We are recommending to award to Parman. They were at $6.50 per gallon on the antifreeze and $1.90 per gallon on the windshield washer fluid.
Questions, gentlemen? I see none. We'll do the roll call vote. Mr. Tyson,
Motion to approve. Vote
Chairman,
yes.
we need a, Chairman, we need a first and
Yeah.
second.
yeah, Stan did it right. I did it wrong. Mr. Tyson, I'm gonna take it as a motion to approve an award Parman. Do I have a second, please? Thank you, David. Second, Mr. Coleman. Now we'll take our vote if there are no questions. Any questions? All right, we'll start the vote. Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman,
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis,
Davis, yes.
and Mr. Wilson.
Wilson, yes.
Anderson, yes. Contract will be awarded to Parman for the antifreeze and the windshield washer fluid. The next we have is for bid tabulations on striping. Leslie?
We received 4 bids for the striping. We are recommending to award to Volunteer Paving at $322,500. They are not the low bid, but again, highway markings was not considered due to poor performance. We had canceled their contract in 2017.
Mr. Hood?
Recommend volunteer paving for our striping this year.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen?
Coleman, so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Do I have a second?
Wilson, second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Gentlemen, y'all have any questions? We're ready to be taking a vote on volunteer paving for the striping. Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
Mr. Davis?
Davis, yes.
Mr. Tyson?
Mr. Tyson, yes.
Anderson votes yes. Passed unanimously. Volunteer paving will be doing our striping this year. And looks like the next one, and looks like the will be for hot mix. Leslie?
Yes, so on this bid, we award to all of them, which the bidders this year were Rogers Group, Fairview Asphalt, Volunteer Paving, Vulcan, and Wright Paving. And the state hall formula is used for each project based on the location to determine which one is the in our best interest to use.
Mr.
So
Hood?
basically, we're awarding to all of them.
Thank you. Mr. Hood?
Yes, so like Leslie said, we use all of these. If we're in Fairview, we always go to Fairview Asphalt. And just while we're paving up this particular season, we just go to the closest mix plant, and that saves us a lot of time and money too.
Before I get a motion, Bobby, down on the bottom of this sheet, it says recommended award based on state hall formula and total project cost. Is that the way you want this to read, or just make the motion for the 5 groups that are offering a bid for hot mix?
I recommend what we do is have a motion to award per project based on the state hall formula and project cost.
Did you get that, Leslie?
Yes, sir.
And Elaine, did you get that too for the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do I have a motion, gentlemen, for what Bobby said?
Coleman, so moved.
So moved.
Proper motion by Mr. Coleman, seconded by Mr. Tyson. Other questions? All right, we'll have roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Wilson this time.
Wilson, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Davis, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Coleman, yes.
Thank you, and Mr. Tyson.
Tyson, yes.
Anderson votes yes. The hot mix is awarded to all the groups based on the area in which we're working. The next bid tabulation is for tires. Miss Mitchell, please.
Okay. We had 4 bidders for the tires. We are recommending the award to go to Moody's Tires.
All right. Mr. Hood.
I recommend Moody's Tires as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Do I have a second?
Wilson, second.
Wilson, second. Eddie, any comments?
Yes, I would recommend Moody's Tires as well.
Thank you. Questions, gentlemen? Y'all ready to vote? Mr. Davis, your motion, how you vote, please?
Mr. Chairman, we need a motion.
Oh, I thought we had one. Okay. Excuse me, I'm back up. I need a motion for this, please.
Coleman, so moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Tyson, back to second.
Second. Tyson, second. Any questions now, gentlemen? Thank you, Bobby. Any questions? We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Tyson?
Tyson, yes.
Mr. Coleman?
Coleman, yes.
Mr. Davis?
Davis, yes.
And Mr. Wilson?
Wilson, yes.
And Anderson votes yes. The contract for tires will be awarded to Moody's. Leslie, did I overlook any of them? Did I get them all? You or Greg, either one?
That's all of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, gentlemen, that concludes our annual bids we do each year. So we'll do our Highway Commission district reports for your comments. Mr. Wilson, I'll start with you, please.
To my knowledge, there's no complaints.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Everything's good. Everyone's staying home, I guess. They're not driving.
And Mr. Coleman?
Everything's quiet here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Tyson?
I have one question for Mr. Hood. Is how are we coming over in River Rest on the paving?
We paved that one street, Mr. Tyson. That one back was working 2 days a week. And of course, we
That's
had
on
a mail.
Boxwood.
Yes, I really want to caution nothing out there, so I pulled off. I am going back in there probably sometime the end of the month in July, want to finish those streets out. I done talked to those landowners and told them that, and they all okay with that. I told them we'll be back. We just couldn't, we were spinning the wheels out there because trying to mill it in 2 days, we just couldn't accomplish nothing.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Any other questions,
And-
Mr. Tyson?
No, sir, everything's, where I am, everything's kind of calm and peaceful over here.
Mr. Hood, anything from you?
We had a meeting, because we're paving every day now with bush hogging, our normal routine. We had a couple of bridges last night that people did a little artwork on, and we're gonna take care of that this morning. But other than that, everything's pretty quiet around here.
I think I heard Mr. Coleman said if they did them in orange and white, leave them that way, but I'm not sure. I heard
That would be fine with me, man.
Get
that.
We might need to
get
look at
those
some orange
first.
paint up here.
Mr. Coleman said get those first. Anything else, Eddie?
No, so that's all.
Well, overall, from the chairman's report on the highway, I want to commend Eddie and his men for the work they're doing during this very difficult period of the COVID-19. Just like we're doing these electronic meetings, all of the county commission meetings, all of the ladies we're all having to work. Although they're not all bad, we've learned for the most part some good and bad about it. We will have our county commission meeting Monday night online, those same executive orders I read earlier, those same channels. So if you want to watch a county commission meeting on television, you can. I think we have 35 resolutions, but thanks to Jeff and Bobby, we were able to kind of come up with some ways to maybe help speed the meeting along. We had a budget meeting the other night that really only lasted an hour and a half on, I think it was 15 transfers and 35 resolutions. So we kind of figured out a way. We didn't, Bobby and Jeff did. But things over at the county, we're open 5 days now, but it's by appointment. As you would imagine, our clerk's office where the car tags are being issued is the most jammed. It's the crowdest. We're doing a numbered system. We're also, for those people that are working from home, you're taking telephones home and answering the calls. And then we're doing some Saturday work to catch up on some 1,500 car tags we're behind that have come into the mail and through other areas.
Chairman, may I
yeah.
ask you a question about that?
Sure.
Are the kiosks at the rec centers open now for car tags?
They are, David, and also as Monday, you have to have your car re-inspected. So the executive order was waived to the end of May, but be sure to have your car inspected again, and that'll probably slow some people down because they were rushing over here. The kiosks are open and working. All of our rec centers are opening, and today we're supposed to have our fields open. The contact sports are being allowed in some limited fashion. Indoor pools are that way too. Well, you would imagine, as you would imagine, low interest rates have driven a lot of activity in Sherry Anderson, Register Deeds office. Most of the things she's doing is very time sensitive. So Kevin Benson's our property manager, set up a couple of boxes out here, and people can call, and we'll come down and get them, stamp them, and then take care of the time sensitive side of that. But overall, all in all, it's a little bit of awkwardness. People having to have their forehead checked. If you come in the building, we're suggesting they wear masks or we hand them a mask. We have pulled the state mask from the public health department and through the governor's office because of the issues that have been brought up. If you all have any of those masks marked Tennessee, please do not wear them until they're approved and certified that they are safe. There was some allegations made. There was possibly a pesticide used in those. So we're issuing just disposable over here. When you come over the next time to the administrative complex, you'll see a complete facelift, about 2/3 finished now. The crew has been working on the building. The windows are going in. They're almost through with the second, third floor. And probably next week they'll begin on the main floor behind Leslie's office and Nina's office and down through that spot. So,
Question, Rogers.
sure.
The senior citizens up on the hill, is it open for business up there next to the library?
Not yet. The enrichment center is beginning to get open for adult exercise with proper 6-foot spacing, the things that you would require. The senior citizens section and organized area, we still haven't opened it full force as you would expect, Mr.
Right.
Tyson. Apparently our seniors are like my age and up. We're all much more vulnerable than some of the other at-large populations. So we haven't quite gone there. We haven't quite figured out how to do that. Believe me, they want to get open. Our seniors,
Okay.
our seniors in our pools, though, they're back exercising in that baby warm bath water in our indoor pools, so they can get their exercise. And, they're back. They're back full force.
Mr. Chairman, I assume we're officially adjourned for the Highway Commission, right?
Yeah, we are. I'll make a motion, David.
Okay, motion to adjourn. But then I had just a off the record question for Ms. Mitchell after we're adjourned.
Okay, I'll let you do that. Let me get Bobby and see if he's got any legal issues before you make that motion.
All right.
No, Mr. Mayor, no legal issues.
I was just thank you, Bobby. I was just trying to give a synopsis. Leslie, you want to stay on there with David? Anything else for the good of the cause? Then we'll adjourn the meeting at 9:07. Elaine, go ahead, David. We'll get off and you all can have your
Well, I was